everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this slightly wet afternoon. I'm really glad to see even a little bit of rain. My name is Erin Greenwald. I'm Deputy Director here at the Historic New Orleans Collection, and I really appreciate all of you coming out today. Our mission at the Historic New Orleans Collection is to steward the history and culture of New Orleans, Louisiana, and the Gulf South. Cross-disciplinary programs like the one you're about to experience helps us to fulfill our vision, which is to foster greater understanding of the past, the present, and future. Our goal today is to bring centuries of cultural and literary resistance to life, to illustrate an inspirational and artistic through line that began in the mid-19th century and is still alive today. Les Cenelles has convened as a revolutionary entity 3 times in our history. First is the 1845 publication Les Cenelles, Choix des poesies indigenes, considered the first anthology of African American poetry. Then in the mid-20th century as a salon-style academic group, Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters, and now as a cutting-edge ensemble using music and words. Today we welcome the modern iteration of Les Cenelles, an incredible musical ensemble comprised of historically informed scholars and multi-instrumentalists. The ensemble features Dr. Denise Frazier, Joseph Darensbourg, Peter Bowling, and Sultana Isham. They'll be performing alongside guest scholar and area native Dr. Lloyd Pratt, Professor of American Literature at St. John's College at Oxford University. We also welcome the words and medicine work of Jenna May, an herbalist, anthropologist, poet, and urban farmer, the self-proclaimed resident plant nerd of Bulbancha Liberation Radio. Jenna May couldn't be here with us today, but you'll hear her voice shortly, and we thank her for her contributions to this program. Today's event is being recorded and will be made available at a later date on HNOC's YouTube channel. Immediately following the program, we welcome you to join us for refreshments, and we encourage you to take the opportunity to taste Les Cenelles. These small red berries, known in English as mayhaws, are native to the swamps of Louisiana, and as you'll learn today, they've inspired generations of poets, writers, and artists. Our colleague, food historian Dana Logston, has prepared a small bite for you to get a taste of this delicate flavor. And lastly, there's another table in the back corner of the room where you can have the opportunity to purchase a copy of one of 3 books related to today's program. And they are Afro-Creole poetry in French from Louisiana's Radical Civil War era newspapers, which was translated and introduced by Clint Bruce and published by HNOC in 2020. The fabulous Economy Hall, The Hidden History of a Free Black Brotherhood by Fatima Sheikh, published also by the Historic New Orleans Collection in 2021. Musique, a musical anthology to celebrate the soundtrack of Louisiana, published by our community partners at the New Foundation, and the album and companion book feature 2 tracks and an interview with Les Cenelles. Thank you to everyone who worked to make this program possible, including all of our presenters and performers. Special thanks to St. John's College at Oxford University for their generous support of this program and of Dr. Pratt's work. Thank you also to Brian Wagner at UC Berkeley and an open classroom for New Orleans culture for their collaboration. And also thank you to our community partners at New Foundation for their promotional support. And now please welcome Resistance, 3 Centuries of Les Cenelles.
ancestors, all of the people who are of this place, and all of yours too, because they brought you here. Yeah, we would like to thank Sybil Klein, Camille Nickerson, Brian Costello, Norman Shapiro, the Neighborhood Historic Project, Rachel Brunlin, and her son Pi Barnes, the New Foundation, Gumbo Zebs, Tilik Creole, Clint Bruce, Lata Creole, the Villa Albertine, Alliance Française, the Union Française, Lycée Français, all the other Français out there, Audubon, EB, all of our beautiful French and Coury-Denis, Louisiana French teachers, especially Lawson Oda and Cliff St. Laurent, Jonathan Maillet, and Tom Klingler. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
I want to thank Lester Sullivan, Giovanna Joseph, Nick Spitzer, Milton Sherman, Thais and Marcus St. Julien, and a lot of people, but the main thing is the Hope Dewey.
And everybody at the Historic New Orleans Collection. This has been a beautiful experience to work with all of you all. I want to thank Kim, Basteville, and the Baby Dolls also. And I'm done.
Dana,
Dan,
Dawn,
yes.
and Joseph Longson.
Thank you.
And we'll tell you more. So now that we've communed, we're going to go back about 2,000 years when this dude was asked, how should we do this? Abu the Bashmaya Tete Malhuta Nehuetiana Aikana the Bashmaya Barha Hovlan Lachma the Sunkinan Yomana Washbuklan Haure Wela Tahlan Lenesyu Ela Batsan Min Bihisha told Lachim al-Huta
La Fam Stongo. This is Lady J, resident plant nerd and herbalist at Bulbancha Liberation Radio. I want to talk about one of my favorite medicines to grow and work with. Southern mayhaws are our local Crataegus species. They are also called thorn apple or hawthorn. The flowers appear before the leaves in January, and their fruits or haws are ripe and red in May, hence the name mayhaw. Southern mayhaws tend to grow in swampy or wet areas with standing water, and are traditionally harvested by boat or pirogue in Louisiana, but they can be adapted to a city or a garden landscape as well. Mayhaws are related to apples and roses, and like many species in that family, they have sharp thorns. Just as those thorns help protect the tree, mayhaws are used for spiritual protection as well. Additionally, indigenous people use the thorns as needles, blowgun darts, fish hooks, and for wound care, such as digging for splinters or lancing a boil. Our ancestors even used the thorns as tattoo needles. Food is medicine, and mayhaws are chock full of antioxidants and pectin that help strengthen the heart and reduce inflammation. They are traditionally prepared as syrups or jellies, but can also be boiled for teas and infused into alcohol or vinegar extracts. Our indigenous ancestors used to dry the fruit pulp with dried meat for trail food and winter storage. Preservation technologies still used today as trail mixes and jerky. Mayhaws are heart medicine. The leaves, flowers, and fruit help strengthen the cardiovascular system. They heal heart tissue, strengthen heart contractions, and can help lower blood pressure and cholesterol. Caution is necessary, however, when taking pharmaceutical heart medications. And just as mayhaw is healing to the physical heart, they help nourish and heal our emotional and spiritual hearts, too. Often used for grief and heartbreak of all kinds, mayhaw medicine mends and fortifies our spirits so that we may bend, but we will not break. They help protect our vulnerabilities without making us brittle or callous to others. Our ancestors knew to harvest and preserve mayhaw in times of abundance so that they could lean on them in times of struggle. We can lean into that wisdom now, too, to reach for a relationship with our plant relatives like mayhaw that help nourish and protect our hearts in challenging times.
But that was Jenna May, who is a beautiful herbalist, and you can see, you can hear her work on Bulbancha Liberation Radio that plays every Tuesday from 4 to 8, and visit the 90 Bulbancha Mound when you have a chance. It's on the Lafitte Greenway. We have seasonal programs there. And so I want to give a hand clap for Jenna May.
I think she was just going to say that this plant basically is an example of how we should be today. This plant survives in hostile environments, and she provided us with a sprig. Where did the sprig go? Oh, behind my ledger. So that's what the plant looks like. Not supposed to have red in this room, so no berries. And usually it has white flowers, and a lot of our Creole ancestors really just pick these all over. They don't grow much anymore, but they're mainly in the south and southwest, throughout Texas and Mississippi and Alabama, where you can find mayhaw jelly. But the idea is it's in the apple family, and hawthorn is what we know it as. First they called it holly, and holly's poisonous, so whoever translated the first Les Cenelles didn't know what they were talking about. And that's the funny part about, learning how to read. It's really important. Reading is fundamental. But this program is about books. People might think, oh, it's a concert. It's like, well, it's my favorite Celtic proverb is there's meat and music in this hide as the fox ate the bagpipe. Instead of two birds with one stone, the idea is we want to offer you the idea of coming to this land and not knowing a lot and not knowing how to read and write. But there was a group of people who not only knew how to read and write really well, they actually were familiar with Voltaire, Baudelaire, Goethe, and so then these people showed up and started telling them they need to speak English, and they were like appalled and were just not amused at all. So they, instead of being restricted to have laws to prevent them from being angry and acting out, they decided to just write some over-the-top poetry that's pretty esoteric if you read it. You gotta learn French, which is not easy because in it there's like these acrostics and all these like amazing devices to deal with coded language that a lot of people would be confused about. But when you're really restricted, it's amazing how creative people can be. So this first piece, as I said, I sang in Aramaic, this ancient language, and I wrote it out in one of these books. So it wasn't a matter of like singing it or saying it. It's like knowing how to write it. We have another example. It'll show the calligraphy that I did to come up with it. But we also played the oldest music that was written in this colony as well, that came from the Ursuline nuns, and that book is housed in this building, or wherever they have it today. But our name, Les Cenelles, was a book that was written in 1845, and again, there's a couple of books that we'll mention along the way, just to kind of give you an idea about literacy being so important to everybody here who just wanted that knowledge, which is just pretty precious if you think about it. So.
The clarion horn was a medieval musical instrument that called people to assembly in times of need. For the past 3 centuries, the sounding of the name Les Cenelles has functioned like the sounding of a clarion call. Communities of like-minded artists and activists committed to liberation and freedom in their most profound senses have answered this call. These collectives have transformed times of need into periods of enormous creativity in New Orleans. That clarion call is the name Les Cenelles has sounded 3 times and called together 3 collectives. The first in the 1840s, then again in the 1940s, and once again now. On October 23rd, 1941, in New Orleans, 16 Black writers and artists met to found a new organization called the Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters. Led by the important poet, historian, and educator Marcus Christian, the society included influential New Orleanians and legendary international figures, including Elizabeth Catlett and Jacob Lawrence. It aimed to rejuvenate the literary and arts cultures of New Orleans in general, and of the Black community in New Orleans in particular. The Les Cenelles Society had ambitions to build a community arts center, stage a yearly art exhibition, and publish an annual anthology of writing by the society's members. They had one other core aim. They intended to publish a centennial anniversary translation of the book of poetry that gave the society its name, Les Cenelles. Over 75 years later, in 2018, a group of musicians and artists united to form, in their words, an ensemble exploring the Creole diaspora through all forms of melody and memory to honor our cultural ancestors and preserve the plurality of their experiences through a prismatic and contemporary lens. The ensemble calls itself Les Cenelles, and today it includes Joseph Darensbourg, Dr. Denise Frazier, Peter J. Bowling, and Sultana Isham. Both collectives took their name and inspiration from an 1845 volume of poetry titled Les Cenelles, Choix des poesies, indigenes. Its title references, as you will have heard, the French word for the mayhaw berries that young Creole men collected in the swamps surrounding 19th century New Orleans, and which Creole women made into jewel-like preserves. Collecting 84 poems written by 17 poets and published in New Orleans, Les Cenelles is written in the French of continental France. Many of the authors of the poems were or had been students of the prominent Creole Armand Lanous, who was an educator, community leader, later a major political voice and the editor of Les Cenelles. It's one of the earliest and most distinctive anthologies of what would now be called African American poetry. And to rephrase the title of Marcus Christian's best-known poem, Les Cenelles is New Orleans. In their art, their organizing, and their engaged forms of practice, all three collectives have committed themselves to ensuring the survival and thriving of other-than-human life in Bobancha, to remembering the history and ensuring the growth of the Creole, Black, and New Orleans communities, and to feeding the resurgent and ongoing elaboration of the artistic traditions that inform the lives of these communities, not least those traditions based in the Creole and French languages of the city. In responding to the clarion call of Les Cenelles, these collectives have laid claim to the lands they inhabit, to the communities that surround them, and to the many African, European, and indigenous traditions that inform their art. When I say that they have laid claim, though, I do not mean to suggest that they have understood themselves as the permanent owners of either these lands or the artistic traditions they engage. They have not acted as the type of proprietors who attempt to turn everything into property to be owned and sold for profit. They have instead laid claim to a respectful and solicitous relationship to the land and the life that surrounds us, to the communities that have given us life, and to artistic tradition itself. These collectives have in this way committed themselves not only to preserving art and life, they have also labored long and labored hard to expand our sense of how art, whether sound or the written word or visual arts or some combination of these, can make it possible to live in different and better ways. Again and again and again, these poets, musicians, and artists of many kinds have asked those who encounter the labor present in their work to reflect on how our individual lives are always tethered to the land and to forms of life other than our own, to the people around us, and to the artistic traditions that give our lives meaning.
Around the corner on Conti, a man came in searching for something, a chance to be with the spirit, to commune, and walk the steps of the birth home of his beloved composer. That spirit's name was Louis Gottschalk. He lived at 518 Conti with his family in the French Quarter. He was dancing to the bambula, filled with loving harmony, and another spirit appeared, playing the violin, and his name was Edmond Didet. I met him under a circumstance of looking for Les Cenelles, who happened to come together on my birthday, October 23rd. The mayhaw berry is a heart medicine, and Edmond Didet's heart was broken long ago. The hollyberry, or the mayhaw, bends our hearts to bend and not break. Was published in 1852, and Giovanni Joseph often refers to this piece as the first blues song, set to concert aria music. He wrote this piece, Mon Pauvre Coeur, in Louisiana, right after he left for France. Stayed there for 25 years. While he was still in New Orleans as a free person of color, making this the first piece to be published by a free person of color. My poor heart speaks of longing and yearning for a love to return. And it makes me think of so many questions. So in New Orleans, he lived in the French Quarter. And the French Quarter had opera houses and burlesque bars. Many people don't know this, but opera houses were multi-purpose and held many functions, such as balls, benefits, and burlesque. I think it's fascinating that when he went to France, the neighborhood that he stayed in, Bordeaux, also had a brothel, once again, called Les Cenelles. Edmond Didet explored this theme of Orientalism in his operatic works, and it makes me think of so many questions. How do we heal from heartbreak? Can you heal where you've been harmed? How do we respond to love when it is found and shared? How do you protect your heart? What does love look like? There's an image of a marriage certificate of Edmond Didet, and I think it's funny that he came back after 25 years. He
bright halo adorning your brow. Divine child, every day I implore you ardently to share the flame that devours my poor heart. If you wanted, despite your opulence, to love only me, you would tell me to calm my suffering. I am yours. Listen to me. Charming and dear idol, listen to me. When I tell you that my soul flies always towards you, always towards you. I have suffered too much. I have no more hope in the future. I have suffered too much in my short existence. I want to die. After my death, come my sweet dove over my misfortunes. Come sometimes to my grave or my tomb. Shed tears. Shed tears.
By the year 1845, when the first Les Cenelles was published, a new chapter in the long project of attempting to enclose and restrict Black life had opened in New Orleans. As many of you will know, the men who wrote these poems came from a distinctive New Orleans community whose descendants live and thrive in the city today. Comprising people of African descent who rejected many of the Anglo-American ways that were coming to dominate the city by the 1830s, including the overbearing presence of the English language. They were a proud community embracing the descendants of people who were either born into freedom or had achieved it in a variety of ways. Some of their ancestors had found freedom through military service to one of the city's colonial or US national governing forces. Others had come from freedom in Haiti. Some had achieved emancipation through self-purchase, some through manumission, others through extra-legal forms of self-liberation. By 1845, the fortunes of this community had begun to shift. The ruling classes in the city, the state, and the nation had developed a heightened fear of enslaved people pursuing self-liberation. The Haitian Revolution, Pointe Coupée, the German Coast Uprising, Nat Turner, David Walker's appeal. These accumulating stirrings of freedom prompted the slaveholding states to enact a new series of restrictive laws. In addition to forcing enslaved people to live under increasingly brutal conditions, these laws also limited free speech. They did so by defining freedom-seeking Black people and their allies as domestic insurgents and their publications as seditious. Even the most conservative publications by people of African descent became suspect. These laws also placed even more aggressive limits on the movements of enslaved people, while at the same time introducing new restrictions on the rights to movement and free association formerly enjoyed by free people of color in this city. By 1830, the Louisiana legislature had passed a new law requiring any free person of color who came into Louisiana after 1812 and before 1825 to enroll on a register with their parish. In 1843, the state adopted a new law requiring all free people of color who'd arrived in Louisiana prior to 1838 to register their names with their parish judge. These new laws demanded that free people of color declare their status as people of color in public directories and legal documents. Other new laws prohibited the circulation of any controversial printed material, where controversial meant anything calling for Black people's freedom. Rights of free association, freedom of speech, the right to an interior life of the mind and of the soul. These new laws aimed to steal all these away from this community. This community, though, did not concede to these attempts to restrict their lives. They refused to sign the registers. They created and built mutual aid societies such as the one described in Fatima Sheikh's brilliant account of Economy Hall. And they developed a tradition of politicized writing and publishing that would culminate in the postbellum periodical poetry so elegantly transcribed, translated, and contextualized by Clint Bruce in the Historic New Orleans Collection's award-winning volume of Afro-Creole protest poetry. In this context, the significance of the Les Cenelles of 1845 starts to come into focus. It exemplifies how this community began reaching out to other places and other times to access the means of resistance and survival. Consider, for example, one of the many seemingly innocuous epigraphs that open the volume and appear throughout it. Translated, the quotation on the right-hand side of the screen reads, "Every sincere conviction deserves respect, and a man's conscience is his hallowed ground, a haven where God alone has the right to enter and judge." It might look like an unremarkable comment from an obscure Frenchman. You could also read it as a restatement of a modern idea of poetry as a process of overhearing a self in conversation with itself, a notion of poetry as a private affair of the heart with little political or social meaning. In this short quotation, however, the volume uses Félicité de Lamennais' words to claim a Creole zone of privacy, a protected interior life, a space where no one, neither priest, nor police constable, nor vigilante white patrols, may enter and judge. In this way, this volume walks right up to the edge of an actionable case of sedition and stands there. In New Orleans in the 1840s, for a person of African descent to claim privacy, conscience, and freedom of thought was a radical act. The fact that Les Cenelles was quoting this specific Frenchman edged this book even farther into a zone of danger. By the 1840s, a knowledgeable reader would have recognized Félicité de Lamennais as an important advocate for universal human rights. He famously propagated a radical form of Christian social democracy encompassing of all people. His was exactly the sort of thinking that the new laws sought to ban. Across Les Cenelles, there are similar acts of reaching out and across to the radicalism of certain strains of French thinking. There are the references to the extraordinarily successful songwriter Pierre-Jean de Béranger on the right. Known for his respect for the common person, he inspired the formation of working people's poetry writing societies worldwide, including here in New Orleans. There is the volume's name-checking of Alphonse de Lamartine, who was a leader of the effort that culminated in the abolition of slavery in the French colonies and of the French Atlantic Triangle slave trade 3 years after the publication of Les Cenelles. A different kind of reaching out and a crossing over also happens in the volume's title. On the one hand, there is something very literally sweet about the story of mayhaws and Creole communities where the men gathered the berries and the women made preserves. It describes a kind of gift economy, binding Creole men and women together in circles of mutual affection, a connection referenced in the dedication of the volume to the fair sex of Louisiana. But there's more at stake in this title. It places the creative culinary work of the Creole women of New Orleans on an equal level with the Creole men who wrote these poems. The title suggests that these poems are like mayhaw berries, which in turn makes them a source for the more refined mayhaw preserves Creole women produce. There is a sense of shared making here that matters. Poems are simply preserves of a different kind. It's also the case that in calling out this tradition in the title, these poets were reasserting the fact of a Creole social realm that was under threat in the city. In this period, although some have suggested the Creole social realm was an exclusionary one, the social geography referenced in the title challenges this view. In Marcus Christian's archive at UNO, you'll find this carefully typewritten index card. In it, Christian references Henry Castellanos' 1895 New Orleans as It Was, which recalls Cenelle gathering parties. If you make your way to New Orleans as it was, you find that the land where these young men went in their Mayhaw gathering expeditions was the territory where the borderland Maroons at this city's edge would have ventured and traded. Given the history of interaction between the borderland Maroons and the city's inhabitants, as described in Brian Wagner's work on Bras Coupé and elsewhere, it's hard to imagine a strict line separating the borderland Maroons from the city's other communities, including these men. In geotagging the volume in this way, the Les Cenelles poets were associating themselves with a New Orleans locale that was rich with much more than the genteel culture of French-identified social climbers. It would be too much of a stretch to say that these poets were claiming this specific quarter of the city as their own, but they certainly identified it as a place they traveled to in search of needful, powerful resources of healing and of strength.
So these restrictions, working on suppressed people, but literate and drawing within, especially Catholicism, with a mix of syncretic religions that came from Saint-Domingue, that came from various Creole diasporic needs of people needing to express themselves. And so I was upstairs in like 2013 looking at some cross-references of Madame Théard. This was Marcus St. Julian's piano teacher, and she'd have Camille Nickerson come by and sing some songs. And so in that, I found one song that was called Voodoo Song, which we had many, but we, in our DNA travels, found a lot of Nigerian in between me and Denise, and Madagascar and Panama, Abiyala, all these different things started coming together about how we approach this today, about looking within and using the tools of like capoeira and santeria and voodoo, because the ingredients it took within this Catholicism to take Creole turning within and being in Bulbancha, the place of many tongues, language was not formed here in many ways. So it's the ingredients that came up with a pope whose records found in this building with Black and Haitian written on the documents makes an interesting moment of drawing and rethinking what voodoo means to many, because it's not the devil, it's not bad, it's just something that we have within. So these are exploring some of those angles of those actual words I found upstairs. I use this archive a lot, so I definitely recommend it.
like she said, it's not coming over there. Formosa is not coming over here. So maybe that's the same blood that's flowing through our bodies and through our brains and whatever. I feel really strong that our ancestors are speaking. Our ancestors are hearing us, and they are behind us. And they are so glad that we're speaking up to keep Formosa from desecrating their graves.
On June 7th, 1942, the Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters held their first and seemingly only exhibition. Marcus Christian printed up a beautiful invitation listing the names of the society's members. The program tells us that after opening with God Bless America, there was an address from the group's chairman, Clarence A. Laws. Only then did the radically multidisciplinary nature of the society come into focus. One of the key premises of the past century of thinking in Black and African American studies holds that it is impossible to understand any of the various arts of Black life in isolation from each other. The Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters embodied the spirit of this observation. After the opening song and address, the society moved on to a reading from a short story by Ora Mae Lewis. There was a spiritual from Eugene Willman, a lecture on art in the community from Ferdinand C. Rousseff, poems from Marcus Christian, and the performance of a play by the Dillard Players Guild. The evening concluded with Lift Every Voice and Sing, often called the Black National Anthem, as many of you know. Lift Every Voice was written by James Weldon Johnson in 1900 and scored by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. On tables around the room, in the exhibition space that stood on Canal Street at the YWCA, there were manuscript and published poems, plays, and short stories. On the walls, there were architectural drawings, watercolors, and oil paintings. Sculptures stood throughout the room. 6 linoleum prints were there, all of them by Frank A. Waller, the distinguished New Orleans artist who produced the cover of the program. And there were student exhibitors from Dillard and Xavier, showing pastels, wood carvings, sculptures in stone and plaster, charcoal studies, and watercolor sketches. A broad range of artistic expression and artistic traditions was present that evening, as was a sense that all manners and means of art making would be needed to secure a future for the Black community and for the city of New Orleans. Even the nation's entry into World War II, after the Society's organization and before their first exhibition, did not deter them from their work. It seems clear that Marcus Christian's vision was at the Society's core, which imagined a radically different world, one that outstripped the impositions and impossibilities of Jim Crow segregation. Although the Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters was short-lived, and although World War II seems to have made it impossible for them to produce that centennial anniversary translation of Les Cenelles, there is at least one publication of note that bears the publisher's imprint of the Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters. It's a volume worth noting because it expresses the intensely democratic and egalitarian spirit that Marcus Christian brought to the organization and that the organization in turn brought to the city. As he explains in this short printer's note tipped into Yale University's edition of this volume, Christian began composing a long poem in 1943. The setting of type began in 1945. By 1948, Christian had printed 105 copies of the volume on his own press. The Common People's Manifesto of World War II is an extraordinary document, and not only because of Frank Wilder's striking print. To get a sense of the tone and tenor of the volume, whose colophon reads Les Cenelles Society of Arts and Letters, New Orleans, 1948, you need only tune into the titles of the sections of this long poem. Overlords versus the people. Declaration of interdependence. Mass production democracy. Throughout this poem, a sense of interdependency, world community, and striving after equitable living in a common world is the dominant note. A sense of Christian's commitment to not only the common people, but also the world we share in common, including its other than human life, comes through in a later poem from Christian. In My Heart Is With the Hunted, Christian wrote, "Whenever I hear the crack of guns in thickets woods of Lee, my heart is with the hunted, no matter what it be. If he man or beast or bird, some thing in random flight, I take the side of the hunted thing. I feel that it is right. Whenever I hear the baying hounds, I toss and fume and fret, for I trot beside the hunted thing in terror and thirst and sweat. Whenever I hear the thickets crash, one thing I cannot forget, that though we range with the hunters, we may be hunted yet."
Lloyd, would you turn the next slide, please?
Yeah. Okay. I take for granted being born in Tremay. This is where Marcus Christian lived, and the person who made the food you're gonna have, she's here, and she baked at Mercado's some food to put some mayo jelly on. And we have a picture. If we go to the next, or keep going. Is it in there with her? Did we put it? Oh, okay, all right. Well, anyway, this is my uncle playing with Louis Armstrong and Camille Nickerson. And let's see, that's our new album that you can buy. That feels good. We did for the Library of Congress. Thanks to the new foundation. It feels so good to say our new album is out there. Yeah, so I just was born in Tremay, and I went to Phyllis Wheatley School, and then I went to James Weldon Johnson School. So I didn't grow up with these sort of crazy historic anomalies. Everything was just real. So my father knew Marcus Christian at Dillon University. I was born at Flint Goodrich Hospital that was basically built by Dillon University. But the Dents were there in my life growing up. And Mrs. Dent studied with Camille Nickerson at Oberlin College. And she was like one of the first early families from Houston that were really wealthy. They had like one of the first cars, of wealthy black families. So they came here and they built the hospital I was born in. A cousin of mine who went to Howard University to live with me. And I'm so fascinated at how many people just knew all these people, and they're fading to the point where they're just so part of us, and I don't know, it's just interesting, everything that's touched by real people we still have access to. So I'm just saying it's still living work that's always going on in our appreciation of our work we get to do. So let's see. So back to the Enlightenment, this age of being best, the resorting to pulling within and excellence, the circle of harmony groups, these benevolent societies that provided insurance to everybody, that were just having parades or processions outside. This stuff is still living with us every day, and sometimes it's a nuisance, but it's like just so much a part of us. Where are we here? Oh, yeah, so in the story of these real people, there was a song my uncle who played with Louis Armstrong and our cousin Kid Ory, they but they did a song that happened around Mardi Gras called Tukatu. And that was an endearing term we called each other for like little cabbage. So some lady was all up and being all snooty, got called out by her community, and Dizalzet was her name, and she lived not far from here, and so they got into it, and and so, but of the group of Bayou Ballads, Joseph Beaumont, who knew Camille Nickerson's father, wrote one of the only composed pieces, and it's called You're a Blackamoor. And so we're going to marry these two pieces so they're not battling, but they were performed at Mardi Gras, and so people would dress up in drag and just kind of Lords of Misrule and celebrate Carnival, the goodbye to the flesh. And so we're going to do an example of these two worlds colliding and becoming jazz. J'ai la misère, m'a parlé, la course se prend, qu'on échange la lettre, société finie pour nous chercher donc à bas.
On monte des frères, donc on s'est lié à fond, jamais mon peintre la terre, mais il faut s'aimer d'oyo.
Una blanche et tout faux, mon nom n'est pas tout gâteau. All right, Latin tunes. Latin tunes, Joe Roll talked about it. Or the Trujillo to you.
Let's go to the poem, this song.
Oh, I gotta read in French. I'm a German Creole, so I didn't grow up speaking French, sorry. But bear with me. Je rêvais que l'âme chagrine, j'irai parmi les prés fruits, pas une rose pourprenée, soudain mes yeux sont éblouis. Vers le règne de la prairie, je rêvais qu'elle est bon et froid, la rose et par les seins se criait fuit. Je n'ai pas naquis pas pour toi. Je rêvais comme tourterelle dans une orangerie, une fleur, loin de son compagnon fidèle. À l'écho disons son maguette, je m'approche, la main attendrie, pour dissiper ton triste émoi. Mais elle, en me voyant, s'écriait, fuis, j'aimais. Pas pour toi, je rêvais que, ou parce que sombre, je m'énaillais silencieux de l'aspect de nuit, personne l'attend, un rayon tomba sur mes yeux, de plus il donnait les visages, mon visage, mais lassé, s'enfuit, loin de moi, et ce mot là. Du nuage, dit je ne brille pas pour toi. Jema jao lodo awa lodo mio. 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 Jema jao lodo awa lodo. Alaroye jokode, iba orisha mawo. Alaroye jokode.
So in the spirit of Les Cenelles and just in general not wanting to be quiet in this political climate that we're in, we would like to call on, what's his name? Kendrick Lamar.
Open to you.
Nobody's going to silence any of our different languages, so just to teach you all in case you want to chant along with us. Ye, pa, con,
No.
no. Ye pa con no.
Et pas qu'on non.
Allez.
And by chance, this volume reaches the generation that will consider it with some interest, or the same interest that one takes with looking at simple monuments that were erected by mortals as simple as these monuments themselves. All right, merci. All right, so go eat some mayhaw and have a mayhaw-tini and enjoy the rest of the day. All right.